Hello, my name is Cameron MacKenzie, and my favorite thing is places that feel like home.
Welcome to the Finding Favorites podcast, where we explore your favorite things without using an algorithm. Here's your host, Leah Jones.
Hello and welcome to Finding Favorites. I'm your host, Leah Jones, and this is the podcast where we learn about people's favorite things and get recommendations without using an algorithm. Cameron MacKenzie, author and professor Cameron MacKenzie, is back with us this week. You remember him from probably 2021, I think. Is that when River Weather came out?
Maybe two. It came out right at the tail end of 2021. So
Okay.
I'm not sure if we talked in 21 or 22.
He is an author, he's a professor, and you heard him on the call-in show for the best of 22, and he's back. Cameron, how are you doing?
I'm doing really great. It's great to be back.
It's good to have you. So your students are back on campus?
They are. I am doing a lot of advanced comp this semester. Which,
Okay.
as of now, it's not too difficult. It's a slow ramp up. I can't hit them with too much in the beginning or they get scared.
Right. Is this a class that freshmen take? Is this a freshman level, or this is like junior and they're starting to think about their thesis?
It's probably, if you're an ambitious freshman, you can take it
Okay.
in the second semester, but this is mostly sophomores, I want to say.
So they're moving beyond the 5-paragraph essay.
Yes, we're actually writing, maybe this is boring or not, but I make them write these huge research papers throughout the course is built around just writing this great big monstrous research paper. But the way that we do it is we write several little 5-paragraph essays and then we stick them all together.
Great. And did they get to pick the subject?
Thus far, they like us to have themes. So the theme for this course is love.
All right.
And they can explore that however they want to. They can research economics or business administration or, sociology or however they want to do it.
Oh, nice. So you're early enough in the semester yet that you don't know what their takes are going to be.
Yeah, not yet. Not yet.
Okay.
That might start to happen this week. We'll see. We'll see
Yeah.
how quickly they get through the hoops I've got for them so far.
And like I said, we met when your book River Weather was launching.
Yes.
How was that like launch season for you?
It's been great. This is the second book. The first book, I had no idea how any of this went. So I was sort of learning, as I went along. This one, I had a clearer idea of how I wanted to, promote the book. And I got a lot of help from the press. They were great, setting up a lot of different things. And then, readings and moving around. It's been good. People are buying the book. People are liking the book.
Great. And then you're hard at work at the next one.
Yes. Maybe almost done.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. That's I feel like it's probably exciting and a scary place to be.
Yeah, I think there's I remember a story about Faulkner. Every time he would finish a novel, he would go on a bender.
Yeah.
Because he didn't know what else to do with himself. And he would have
Right.
to start another book so he could stop drinking. I think this is about John Ford, the director. I read that when he was making a film, he wouldn't drink at all while he's making the film. And then once the film's done, he would go back to he lived in some monstrous mansion or something in L.A. And he would wrap himself in a white sheet with a case of booze and lock himself in the library and drink it all for however many days it took.
Oh my gosh.
And that was The Purge
Wow.
from the end of the movie. Hopefully we won't encounter anything so dramatic.
Yeah.
But yeah, I actually have in my mind like new projects lined up.
Okay.
So that when this thing gets off my desk, I don't brood too much.
Yeah.
I can jump to the new thing.
Move to the next project.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just yesterday talking with Marty Beckerman. He's an author who wrote a book about masculinity. It was comedy. and it was Ernest Hemingway's Guide to Masculinity. And he had a really hard time getting it published because the publishers were like, "You're 25. Nobody your age knows who Ernest Hemingway is." This is 10 years ago. And it was like, one, people always know who he is. And two, that's that kind of like finish your work, go on a bender sort of author archetype that we've got.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Hemingway, I love and hate Hemingway at the same time. But I have to really admit that the Hemingway that I love.
Yeah.
And I think a lot about, he was so overly concerned with his own masculinity and performing it and things like that. And but he's an artist, he has to work with the unconscious and what's there. And I think that was, a real weird place for him to live in, that he had to constantly do something that is not necessarily considered masculine. And so he would dress it up maybe in clothes that were, garishly masculine.
You're right. Yeah. I just want to see those cats. I want to go to Key West. I want to see the cats. It's all I care about Hemingway.
I've never been to Key West. I really want to go.
Yeah. Those polydactyl, his 6 clawed cats of his.
That's right.
Yeah. That's the only reason I want to go to Key West. There's like a really scary bridge. I think that you have to take to get there, or you fly or take a boat. Like, I don't know. I think I should go while it exists.
The weather's supposed to be very nice.
Yeah. So as we were going back and forth talking about topics, I love what you came up with to talk about this time, which is places that have felt like home.
Yeah.
They weren't home and they feel like home. So why don't we kick it off with, what does this concept mean to you, like at a broad level?
Yeah. Places that I'm 45 now. And there are places that I've been in my life. I've moved around a lot. I was born outside of Richmond. My family lived there until I was about 6. And then we moved to Western Maryland, stayed there from about 1st grade to 5th grade. I don't have positive memories of that. I really, idealized the time in Richmond, and then moved to Northern Virginia.
Okay. Which
was constantly changing. One of the things about Northern Virginia, I go there now where I lived and I can't barely find the roads. So,
because DC, like the metropolis that is DC, has just gone into every field and farm in Virginia, right?
Yeah. I grew up in Loudoun County.
Yeah.
And, I lived in this little town called Ashburn, which when I would tell people, they had no idea what I'm talking about. Now I can say Ashburn to people and they're like, oh. Not in a positive way.
Uh-oh.
It's a monstrosity of strip malls and subdivisions that just go on and on and on, So I think for me, and then from there, then I went to college and then I went to Japan. And then, well, I guess we'll talk about it because a lot of these places are in. So I think there's been, for me, really sort of a sense of dislocation in terms of place, in terms of where I'm from, a place I can trust or a place that I feel anchored to, And maybe because of that, I hold on a little more tightly to places that have really felt good.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's, just a thing you walk into and see one time and you're like, oh my God, this is absolutely, I was here in a past life. I've lived here. And sometimes it's just really sort of unique places that I've returned to again and again and again. And I realize now they take up a lot of space in my head. I have dreams that occur there. I'm still walking through those rooms sometimes. So that sort of gets folded into it too.
Okay. Yeah, I also think so. I'm also 45, and for me, when you said places that feel like home that aren't home, and that continue to have that feeling, there's a part of me that's like, yeah, I was raised on Cheers. And that's about one specific restaurant and a group of regulars being a home away from home.
Yeah.
And I think there have been times in my life in Chicago where I've made it my goal to become a regular and to find a place that felt like that for me, because I think I will possibly watch too much Cheers at a young age.
There is, there's a need for community. And when I was thinking of putting together this list, I'm like, yeah, there's been places where I've tried to foster a community. It didn't work.
Yeah.
I was like, do I include this place? I didn't really have a good time there, but I
right.
worked really hard to try to find a good time. We seek it out. I think that's a healthy thing. I think it can be, really dangerous to sit at home and watch, HBO over and over and over again. But I find myself drawn to, and I was just, stop it, get out, leave the house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's been hard. Has it? Sorry, my cat is puking so close to me right now. How has returning to places been kind of post-vaccine? I have found it really hard to get back out to like neighborhood bars, and just like the neighborhood hang has been hard for me to get back to. Yeah,
I think I would say in the part of the country where I live, there's
the neighborhood hang is not.
Well, there were a lot of people that didn't want anything closed at all.
Sure.
And felt no need for any sort of distancing. And, when I started going back out again, and that was the sort of vanguard crowd, and I was like, I don't think this feels good. It feels very dangerous. I remember I was in Charleston, and I was walking down in Charleston, South Carolina, and I was walking down the street. I was there for like a weekend or something. We're wearing our masks and everything. And there was a bar that was packed, absolutely packed.
Yeah.
Like pre-COVID packed, people out in the street, and I was just dumbfounded. I just had to stop and say, what are they doing? I didn't know there was a college right in the middle of Charleston. I think, college kids will be college kids.
Yeah.
And so it was weird at first to get back out in the world. But I found once I got back out there, and I think one of the places we'll talk about today, it felt really, and yet I had to sort of suspend my disbelief a little bit as to, am I going to get sick, or, what is the potential of all this now? I had to suspend that a little bit and be like, no, this is good. It's good to be around these people.
Yeah. Yeah. So should we start with what I'm guessing might be the club called Nation in Washington, D.C., or should we start with Kamakura, Japan?
Let's do Nation. Let's do Nation. We'll do this.
I'm just guessing based on geography that was the place.
Yeah, we'll do this chronologically. So there was a club in Washington, D.C. It opened in 95 and closed on, I want to say, 2006.
Okay.
And it had a bunch of different names. But it was the room, it was a huge warehouse. It was 3 levels and outside decks and all kinds of things. And it played host to really the center of electronic music culture in the mid-Atlantic area for as long as it was open.
Wow.
And it's sort of silly, but I really want to write about this, but it's funny to talk about now. But yeah, I was a little raver from about 96 to 2000. And it felt so exciting and new and fresh. And it felt like the revolution was coming. I grew up on, Nirvana and Soundgarden and Pearl Jam, and I got to the point I just could not listen to a guitar anymore. I just couldn't. Verse, chorus, verse, I can't do it. And then, Cobain's dead, and I'm like, yeah, that whole thing was, can I curse?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm like, yeah, so all those guys are bullshit. Like, either
right.
you're as dark as Cobain or you're just trying to sell records. I don't buy any of this. And, while that was happening, then I was hearing things like the Chemical Brothers. And I said, this is different. This is new. Where does this happen? And I started to hear about, well, actually I had friends, I think, from high school that had started to go in to DC, to these clubs.
Yeah.
Which were, we're talking like maybe 95. They were really just raves. Their basis was, I think, maybe legally sketchy. But they started to get footholds in D.C., a couple clubs in D.C., and then a couple clubs in Baltimore, and then, up into Philly. And so, I started to go. There were these flyers. I don't know if you were in this scene at all, but...
I was more, no, I was like if you were going to go out with a group of friends and TP a house, I was the friend who held the dog and gave us like the excuse to be on the street and also to run away. Yeah. So like, I didn't go to raves. I listened to the music because I saw Train Spotting and I had both Train Spotting tapes. Right? So I listened to it via Train Spotting, but was too scared to go to a rave.
God, Train Spotting was absolutely, I think, the gateway. Other than just hearing about the more adventurous kids in high school that were going to these things. But I watched Train Spotting. I thought that was the greatest thing that had ever been made. I watched it 4 or 5 times in the theater. I would drag friends to go see it. I thought it was incredible. I read the book.
Yeah. My friend Jeff and I drove, it was his freshman year, my sophomore year, from Decatur, Illinois to Springfield, Illinois, in my Toyota Corolla to go see it in an art house movie theater.
Yes.
Yeah, and then those tapes, like the official soundtrack and then the green soundtrack that was like music inspired by, that wasn't even in the movie. There was such a great introduction.
Yes. And, if we're going to talk about raves, we have to talk about drugs. There was a really rising sort of drug culture that was tied into the music that, to me, at the time, and I'm 18, 19, it felt like the 60s. It felt like, Jimi Hendrix is back. It felt like, the music is speaking to the drugs, is speaking to the music, and it's all tied together in this great big creative. And where does it happen? It happens in these huge social settings where what do people do? They dance. And I did not dance. So
what did you do?
Well, so the first one I went to, and I was not prepared for it at all. I just heard about it.
Yeah.
And it was just this monstrous warehouse with these, DJs up at the front. And everyone's sort of standing in line in like these lines like this. And they're looking up at the DJ and they're dancing. And I'm like, I don't know what dance one does to this. So I was just sort of like this. Because in high school, I hated to dance. I didn't go to like middle school dances. I felt so uncomfortable with my own body moving in that way that I refused to do it. And my girlfriend would be mad at me and whatever. So anyway, I go to this thing and I'm like, oh God, I gotta dance. Okay. And then the people that I went with the first time were making fun of me that I wasn't dancing. And then they would make fun of the dance I tried to do. And I'm like, this is a disaster.
Yeah, you can't. They can't make fun of both.
I know. But then I said, like, all right, the next time I go, because I'm going to come back here, damn it. The next time I go, I'm going to dance. And I trained myself because, again, this is like, so much of it is the people I was going with, too. In college, I was at JMU, which is in Harrisonburg, Virginia, which is not a hotbed of any sort of cutting-edge cultural or social movement. And we were hearing about, these parties, and they had these flyers that would list all of the DJs that were coming through.
Yep.
Because that's how you had to find out. You couldn't find, there's no internet.
Right, and these are like Sharpie. The original is like a Sharpie, and then it's on hot pink paper. And it's got illustrations, or it's literally got clip art, things that were cut, taped down. It's very zine culture, and it's very fluorescent.
Yes, and we would, it was passed around by hand. And I would look at the list, and it's because I was really working hard to understand what this music was. I would see the names of the people that I was trying to listen to. And I'm like, oh my God, they're going to be there? And he's going to be there, and she's going to be there, and oh my God, this is amazing. So we would drive up on Friday night. Was the party Friday night? I think the party was Friday night. It was a Saturday. Well, sometimes the parties Fridays and Saturdays. But anyway, we would drive up, me and my girlfriend at the time, and we had an on again, off again 5-year just disastrous relationship. First loves, but God, it was. But this scene was also a major part of it because nobody else where we lived was into this music and into doing this thing, and we would do this thing together. And you walk into you can hear it from the outside. You park your
and
car.
you can feel it from the outside.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you walk in, and the way it was set up, first off, you had to get patted down, so that took a while.
Right.
And then you went into kind of like a small room. They had a jungle room, and then they had the main room. The jungle room played drum and bass, and so it was a different kind of. But the main room was usually house, and it was this. You'd walk down this another little hallway, and then it just opened up, and all these risers and these people are dancing. And people were very good dancers. I'm like, oh my God, she's beautiful. He's incredible. How do you do that? And I'd sit down and I'd watch. I'm like, how do you spin? Where's your foot on the spin?
Right.
And then the music going, you're like, okay, I'll try the spin. Oh no, I screwed it up that time. And I remember one time I'm trying to get this dance move down, and I don't think anybody's watching. Then I get it, and I'm like, woo! And this girl just comes up out of the crowd. She goes, good job. Because it was also such a it was such loving's a weird word for it, but that's really what it was. It was something that was against the dark aggression of all the rock music, that had dominated for the 10 years before.
Right.
This was supposed to be happy and joyful, and everyone was here to help one another. And it helps that everyone is on a drug called ecstasy that doesn't make you angry.
Right.
So it was it started to feel, I became known there because I'd wear the same hat all the time. For some reason,
Tell me about the hat.
So, sometimes you have little talismans. Mm-hmm. And this was a bucket hat. I don't know where it came from. Maybe my dad gave it to me or something. It was a Nautica. I can see it now. Mm-hmm. It was a tan Nautica hat. It said Nautica across the band, and it was like with a navy band across it. And I would, this is back when wearing bucket hats were super cool. Yeah.
They're cool again. FYI.
I know.
It's weird.
Look around and I'm like, I had pants that were that big. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I think what also, so in my conversation with Marty, we were specifically talking about the 90s, nostalgia for the 90s. And he just sent me an essay tonight. And I think it's really hard for my nephews to understand, if you were going to learn a dance in the 90s, there were not videos on the internet yet.
No, there's no YouTube.
There's no YouTube. There's no TikTok. In order to learn a dance, you either buy a tape that's how to do the dance and you watch it at home and you practice at home.
Yes.
Or you go to a club and you watch people and you try and remember, because you're probably not taking your family's $1,000 camcorder to the rave.
So I had me and a friend of mine, Mike, that I would, who would also go with us to these clubs in DC. And there was a particular kind of dancing style that became really popular there. And I was dancing in that style, and he was dancing in that style, and I had other friends that were. And then my other friends would go to different parts of the country. They'd go to Seattle, or they go to Oregon, or I remember being down in a rave in New Orleans, and we would start dancing, and people didn't dance like that, and they would stop and they'd look at us like, wait a minute, how'd you do that? And that's how it got passed around.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I mean, as late as 2001, I was a hall director in Southern Colorado. And there was a group of freshmen who were breakdancing, and they would store their cardboard in my office and come and break dance in the lobby outside of my apartment and practice breakdancing so that then they could go on the nights when the bars were 18 and over in town, that they were ready to dance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a point in my life where I took, this is funny for me to say now, dancing very seriously. You know? I had my moves down. I had my glow sticks going. I had, all that stuff.
Nice.
And it started to feel, to me, I played rugby in college. And so, during rugby season, I'm playing rugby. But then when I'm not in season, okay, so what is the physical activity by which I'm challenging myself? And it became going to this place and trying to do new dances.
Yeah. And dancing for hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
A rave wasn't 90 minutes.
Yeah, no, the doors would open at like 10 and they'd, until the sun comes up.
Yeah.
I remember being there and they would open up the big back doors, onto the street. And I'm looking outside and I'm like, oh my God, the sun's coming up. Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. Not expecting that. Not expecting that at all.
Have you watched any of That 70s Show reboot, That 90s Show?
No.
You should watch the episode where the kids go to a rave in Milwaukee. Or the kids try to go to a rave in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
It's pretty outstanding.
The 90s nostalgia, I mean, I get it because, as we're in middle age now and we have more, I don't know, money and more access to exposure, then all of a sudden our idealized childhood becomes, what's happening. I mean, when I was that age, it was the 60s. And the 60s, what are the 60s now? 60s are gone. Now it's the 90s. Everything's, going through, which is hilarious to me that I get to revisit this stuff. But, it's enjoyable.
Did that just kind of come to an end for you when you graduated college and moved away? Or was there sort of a day crescendo, the scenes sort of started to fizzle? Or was it that you moved away that ended your time going there?
I think I just got worn out. I got burnt out on the music. I got burnt out on the drugs. I got burnt out on the scene. And, it wasn't interesting to me anymore. I also wanted to dance with people. Could I find a girl that I could dance with? That's not really a thing that happens, at a rave. I think, the scene as I was familiar with it, there were, really strong strains of people that weren't comfortable having or going out and experiencing something like that at night, right?
Yeah.
You're not there to hook up. It's not a hookup scene.
Right.
It's, a scene where, you do everything that we're talking about, and no one's really going home with anybody or anything like that. And, after a while, I'm like, I could, let's try something different. Let's dress up like adults and go to a place that has a bar and maybe try to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
Because none of that was happening there.
But it's still for you, it felt like home. And so people recognized you by your bucket hat.
Yeah. Yeah, the bouncers did too. And that was awkward.
That's amazing.
But I remember, every inch of that club, where the doors go. And, when I talk about, when I was saying earlier about, things that I still dream about, a lot of times I'm still in that club trying to find, oh God, where'd Dominique go? Where'd Rose go? Is Mike over? Is that Mike? I don't know if that's Mike. I have something to do here. I can't remember what it is. Oh my God, look at this dancing. Look at the boom, 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 that sort of thing. But I remember every square inch of it.
I love it. I love it. Are you ever tempted to go find a night of dancing like that anymore?
No. No.
Even to sit quietly on the side?
No, I don't think so. Gosh, I would, it would be surreal. So actually, this is like 4 or 5 years ago. I went to London for a conference and I gave a paper, and I found a club that was playing just, straight London drum and bass. And it was in like this, it was like the basement of a bar. And I was blown away because it was all the music that I had listened to when I was so young. And I'm standing there and I'm like, drinking a beer. And it was a living scene. Like, these were young kids. I didn't know who the DJ was. I didn't know who they were spinning. But I'm like, oh my God, like, it's still alive here. Because, all that in America just, hit a wall.
Yeah.
But it was, a living, breathing thing. And I was like, it's still going. And when I came back home, I was like, okay, so let's find these new, who are the new producers and, what are the new record labels and all that stuff. And, and I found some, and I started poking around. I'm like, it all sounds exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
There's also very much like folkies, and sometimes country music's like this, sometimes rap's like this. It's like it has to be so pure that it can never change.
Yeah.
And I think that strain really exists, especially in the drum and bass.
Yeah. Where should we go next?
Let's go to
Kamakura?
Kamakura.
All right.
Totally different.
Is
So-
Kamakura a city or a bar?
It is a city.
Okay.
It is, I guess it's officially a city. It's kind of like a town south of Tokyo. So I
Okay.
lived in Tokyo for about 1.5 years. And I wanted to live in Tokyo. I asked to live in Tokyo because I didn't really know that much Japanese. I didn't know anything about Japan, really.
Mm-hmm.
And I figured that, worst comes to worst, I'll be in a big city and I'll be able to get by.
Yeah.
And it was a wild time. Tokyo was, it's like going to the moon. It's insane. But it's also insane. It's a lot happening all the time.
Yeah.
And,
So is this like 2000 that you
yeah,
went?
this is 2001, 2002.
Okay.
9/11 happened when I was there, which was surreal.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, there's a lot of cultural pressures. And I was not going home. I had like a job that I had to hold down.
Yeah.
And so things would get really, really stressful sometimes. And I had a couple American friends, and one of them mentioned that she wanted to go to this town, Kamakura, which had a beach. And it was south of Tokyo, and it was really short. I was like, cool, let's go. So we took the train down there, and it was like, I don't know, maybe 45 minutes on a train. And it stops in this just tiny little train station. It looks super cute. It's something out of like a Miyazaki movie or something. Mm-hmm. And we get off the train, and okay, there's the beach down there. And then Kamakura was the capital of Japan in like the 1200s.
Okay.
And so it has all of these gorgeous temples and shrines sort of up in the hills. And you have to sort of walk up to get to them. Mm-hmm. And I heard about these, and yeah, let's go look at some. And I had been told about this particular Buddha called Daibutsu is sort of the shorthand way that they refer to it. Daibutsu just really means like big seated Buddha. But this was the first one that we went to, and you sort of one of the things about this town is that everything seems life-sized. Nothing. It's almost like you could see the whole thing, and it also didn't look like it changed from about like 1750.
Yeah.
We still got all these little wooden buildings with paper screens. People are walking around in those like wooden shoes that that you'll see wearing kimono and things like that. I'm like, where am I? This is so strange. And we go up this hill and go up this hill, and then it just sort of opens, and there's this monstrous copper, I think he's copper, Buddha sitting there. And the thing I got about it, even from the first time, and it's one of the reasons I had to keep returning, is that he's just out there in the wild. There's no temple around him or anything. He's just in the air. And he just looks so doggone peaceful. He looks so content. But also in an elegant way. If I look at different sorts of Buddhists from China or even India, maybe they're standing. They seem very skinny. This guy seems solid. He's got a great big head, a great big neck, great big shoulders, and he's just sitting there. And I felt, a sort of feeling of peace and a sort of feeling that I was being cared for, but not in an active way, And I was raised Christian. I don't really have much of a connection to it. I find it sort of fascinating, but I don't feel anything from it. But that sort of I feel like that sort of religious tradition emphasizes like an active engagement with, say, divine, transcendental something, right? Jesus is going to touch you, kind of,
Right.
right? If you allow it, if you accept it. But to be around that sculpture was almost just sort of like an umbrella of care and of peace. And I walk up to it, and I mean it's so big, but it's not foreboding at all. Little kids are running around, and then you can go inside of it.
Oh.
Like it's a goddamn Grimace at McDonald's. And I'm inside of it, and I'm like, you've got to be shitting me. This is so cool. People got they're writing graffiti on the inside. I'm like, can you do that? It's like this. It's like almost like a park,
Yeah.
And this great big Buddha is like a goofy little family member that you can. It was wonderful. And I found myself when things would get complicated, difficult, impossible to control, as they often feel like they do for a lone American in Tokyo. I would be like, I'm going to go down, say hey to the Buddha.
Yeah.
And so I'd get on the little train and go down there and just stand around a little bit.
That's amazing. I was in Japan, and I turned 26 in Japan. I was there for work. I worked in study abroad administration. I had studied abroad in Argentina, and so I had programs in Latin America and Japan, and my employer felt that I was prejudiced towards my Latin America programs. Fair. I speak the language. I went on these programs, so they sent me to Japan to get prejudice towards my Japan programs too. to change my biases at work. Maybe that's a better way to say it. And it was just amazing. And going, I had this experience of, we went to a storytelling festival, and I did not speak any Japanese. And there were like two types of storytelling, I think. There's one where it's the storyteller just sits on the ground, but they're doing all the voices. They're emoting so much, and their voices are happening so much that you just feel, even with no language, I was like, well, I'm absorbing this whole story. I'm understanding, like, I'm picking up what they're putting down. And I had been 2 nights before I left for Japan, my apartment was robbed. Ooh. And like all the petty cash was taken out of my purse. Somebody came in through our bathroom window. So I went to Japan very shaken, very like scared. What's going to happen? Am I going to break my lease? Am I going to live with my roommate anymore? The answer was no, because the cops think she knew who came through the window.
Yeah, they were looking for something quite particular.
Yes. And going to Japan, and I don't know that my sense of safety would have been restored as quickly if I had stayed in Chicago those next 2 weeks. And it was something about, it was such a good experience. And I would love to go back. It's been 20 years.
Yeah.
But I think there's something really, just like steeped, like the culture is like steeped into the ground because it's still living, like their traditional culture is still alive. It just feels like it was, I don't know if it sounds mystical. Like there's no way to talk about it without sounding kind of woo-woo, right?
To us, it's mystical, and to them, it's their culture, right?
Right.
That sculpture's been there since 1250.
Right.
And that's one of the younger complexes in that town.
Yeah.
There's huge shrines that have been up there for 1,000 years, and people, go to them all the time.
Yeah.
It's alive, and it's part of what's going on, and we don't really have anything comparable.
Right.
The funny thing about that sculpture, I looked at it, I'm like, I like this guy. I don't know why I like this guy. And then the story is that they built a wooden one, and then there was an earthquake, and that broke. So then they cast him, and it was inside of a temple. And then there was an earthquake, knocked down the temple. He was fine. They built up another temple, another earthquake, knocked down the temple. He was fine. They built up another temple, and there was a tsunami that wiped out the temple, and he was fine. So we're like, let's just stop building temples and let's just let him sit out here. I'm like, yeah, this guy's a survivor. He's going to be fine.
Oh, that's amazing. So that was the place then that you went to get grounded and get recentered while you were in Tokyo?
Yeah, being abroad, I think, for that long in a culture, certainly for me at that age, you can start to form an antagonistic relationship to the culture. Mm-hmm. And that's bad because you can't get out.
Yeah.
You start to get really homesick, and you start to feel increasingly alienated from people that you thought you knew, but you start to realize that maybe you didn't. And one of the things about living in Japan is like, oh, I got to figure it out. That's like week 3. And then
right.
Like week 4, you're like, I don't know anything. And then week 10, you're like, oh no, I got to figure it out now. And week 11, I don't know anything. Mm-hmm. But as that was happening, I could go down there, and that Buddha is very Japanese, but it also felt like to get a feeling from that everything was still going to be okay. Mm-hmm. That really gave me a lot of energy that I needed to, go back into my daily life.
Yeah.
Like I'm welcome here too.
Yeah. How long did you end up staying in Japan?
I was there 1.5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, then I was ready to come back.
Yeah.
One of the things that, when I first got there and I would try to talk to, I'd talk to Americans and Canadians and Australians, and I'd be like, all right, so, how do you meet Japanese people? And they didn't hang out with Japanese people. They went to a part of town called Roppongi where all the foreigners hang out. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that's stupid. I didn't come here to hang out with Australians.
Right.
But after, a long time, I started to find myself, getting drawn to that section of the city just because it was easier.
Right.
I'm like, all right, this is enough then. I don't need to. I love Canadians and everything. Don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it might be time to go back home.
Yeah. So you come back to the States, and do you head to San Francisco or Philadelphia?
It was Philadelphia.
Okay.
That's where I went right after that, yeah.
And was that did you just throw a dart, or was that grad school, or?
Yeah, it was grad school.
Okay.
I applied to Temple and to the University of South Carolina. I can't remember why those two. I think they both had, I wanted to study modernism and modernist writers, and I think both their programs were really strong. So I applied to those two and got into those two, and chose Philly because I was scared of the South. Okay. And I got to Philly, and I'm like, oh my God, this place is a disaster. Philly is unique, man. Philly is Philly. Philly is tough, and Philly is funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, Philly it's bare knuckles.
Yeah. Are you rooting for the Eagles this weekend?
I got to. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that city loves its sports teams like a religion.
It truly does.
Yeah.
I have a friend who lives in South Philly, and her Instagram, the night they won to go to the Super Bowl, it was wild. Wild.
Yeah. Yeah, and Philly people go to other places and people don't act like that, and they're like, where's the heart and soul of this place? These people are dead inside. I don't understand why they're not, burning stuff down because the sports team won something.
Right. No, we're just doing other things.
Yeah, we got other things to do.
We got other things.
Not in Philly.
Yeah. So then tell me about Fergie's Bar that you found in Philadelphia.
Yeah, so Fergie's Fergie's is one of the great things about Philly is its dive bars. Mm-hmm. It's got a lot of them, and not they're very welcoming. They're very warm. They're very inviting. People in there can be grumpy, but it's sort of like a gentle grumpy. Mm-hmm. And generally the food's good. And I remember I had a friend. He only wanted to go to the worst bars because he didn't feel like he had to impress anybody, and he could wear sweatpants. And that's kind of like
Fair.
what the dive bars are.
Yeah.
Especially if, you're going to one close by. It's like, nobody cares. It's going to be fine. Just, go in there. Don't be a jerk. Have a good time. So Fergie's, but the reason I liked Fergie's is because they would have readings upstairs. And sometimes it's open mic and sometimes they host stuff. And I've been there a couple times. It's a small room upstairs. It's got a little bar in the back. And I've gotten up there and read a couple times, and people really liked what I've said. And it's nice to be on the stage. People are into it. I know half the people because, I came there because of them. They're going to read too. And get off the stage and get congratulated. Okay, cool. You should go up there. Yeah, then they go up there, and they're good. And this has happened several times there that room just takes on an energy of support, and it's really good writers that show up, so the quality is really high, which is exciting. To be able to move in those circles and meet those people. You have major writers that are coming in and just drinking Jack Daniels, and you're there with them, and you can talk to them, and everybody's sort of mixing it up, and it's small enough that you can see the whole thing, And that's happened almost every time. It's some unique, exciting vibe that they have in that upstairs room. And every time I go there, I'm like, this is great.
Yeah.
This is great.
I love an upstairs open mic. Mm-hmm. Shuba's has one in Chicago. They've got a small bar upstairs, and it's a little like it's awkwardly shaped, but they've got a mic and they've got like a little mini stage, and that's all you need.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been looking around trying to figure out like what are the little spaces for open mics or like live podcasts. Like I'm trying to figure out what those spaces are today in Chicago in a post-COVID world. What survived, what's open again, but those rooms, I spent a lot of time in my early 20s, not a lot of time, like 2 years, going to stand-up open mics.
Yeah.
And those rooms are almost all gone now. But they were so special, and there were people that were already famous who would come in and get 5 minutes, or people who went on to become big names in comedy. And there's something special about a local scene that allows everyone at the same microphone.
Yeah. What you're talking about is interesting because I had friends in Chicago, and I went out there a couple times, probably 05 or 06. And one of the guys I knew was a stand-up. Mm-hmm. And it was, Monday night was this place, Tuesday night was another place, Wednesday night, and because we didn't have anything else, so, we'd go see him.
Yep.
And it was, these little rooms that you're talking about, and a super supportive community.
Yeah.
At the end, there was always somebody would get up and say, look, we're all going to help each other. So-and-so got hired at the Tonight Show 6 months ago. So-and-so got hired, to write pilots in L.A., and they're gone, and we're here now, and they're going to come get us kind of vibe. And it felt really good.
Yeah. Who was your friend?
Oh, God. It's Adam. He does, wait, don't tell me now.
Burt.
Adam Burt. Yeah. Yeah.
I did not know him then, but I listened to Wait every week, so.
Yeah.
Nice.
Really good guy.
Yeah, it was a really fun time because Monday nights was Lion's Den, Tuesday nights was Cubby Bear, and the Lion's Den was probably lasted, I think, until 2005, and that would be like 70 people in a night, all drawn out of a pitcher. It was just hours and hours of comedy.
I hope there's young people. This is one of the frustrating things, I guess, about COVID is that things that were going like that had to stop. and now they have to get restarted again. And it's tough to, get the momentum going again after you've had such a hard stop. But I really do hope, I can't hang out till 2 or 3 a.m. 3 or 4 nights in a row like I used to, when I was in my 20s. But hopefully the people that are in their 20s have that.
I think they're getting back to it.
I hope so. I hope so. It's magic stuff.
Yeah. When is the last time you visited Fergie's?
Gosh, probably a year ago, I want to say.
Yeah.
When the AWP was in Philly.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Had an open mic there. That was great. I just come from one other reading, and one of the great things about the AWP is the after day readings or whatever.
Yeah.
And I just come from one, and people are like, "Where are you going?" I'm like, "There's this other one." So then I had all these people in tow that I didn't know, and then we all walk up, and a friend of mine was doing the reading. He's like, "Oh, okay, I'm good to see you." Then he had his students there. And then, they're like, all right, so does anybody else have anything? I'm like, I got some stuff on my phone. So I got up there, read it. People were totally into it. I sit back down at the table, and now I'm friends with these students. The people that I brought, they're like, oh, yeah, we have stuff. And then they got up and read. It was great. It's just great.
Oh, it's the best feeling.
Yeah.
I have a friend of mine has said this is about like hosting Shabbat dinner, but I think it's true of other spaces where like if you're having people over for Shabbat dinner, your apartment will take a deep breath in and make room for everyone. Yeah. And you'll have more people than you should be able to fit in your apartment for dinner, but it's because you're doing something for Shabbat or for a holiday. And sometimes I think open mic spaces are like that too. Like the bar takes a deep breath and somehow there's room for everyone. As long as the fire marshal does not come by.
Right. Maybe he gets paid off.
Right.
Yeah.
So then the fourth place on your list was the Presidio in San Francisco.
Yeah, I'm torn. I feel like I've talked a lot about the Presidio, and I've written about it. I have a couple places like the Presidio. To me, and I guess I'll do this quickly. Was before I talk about this other place, was I would run a lot in the Presidio, and I had been married for a while. It was tough, and I was like, well, I'm just going to go run, and I would run for an hour and a half, and it was a time. In San Francisco, I got there in 2010, right after, this is essentially after the economic crisis.
Yep.
And a lot of stuff, it was affordable then. And it was a cool scene because it was cheap enough for musicians to live in the city and for artists to live in the city. And cheap enough for me to live in the city. And out in the Presidio, like they were renting these old barracks, and nobody had figured that out. I think except for me. And I was like, so I had this beautiful apartment on the beach, and no one ever seemed to be in the Presidio. So I'd go running on these gorgeous paths all up and down these hills, and I almost never saw anybody else.
Wow.
And so, but you get up on the thing and then you look over the whole bay, or you look at the bridge, look out to the ocean. And just the constant sweep and awe of it was really sort of moving. I know I went back there after I finished because I was trying to write the novel the whole time. I didn't know what I was doing because you never know what you're doing when you're certainly writing your first novel.
Right.
So I'm trying to figure that out, and I'm going on these runs, and it's a mess. But when I went back after I'd finished the book and I was going to read in San Francisco, I was like, well, I got to drive out to the Presidio. I drove out to the Presidio, and I just sat down on one of these benches that I would run past. And, I was just overcome, just sobbing. Didn't see that coming at all.
Yeah.
But it was like all the struggle that I had felt on those running paths because the book was done hadn't been in vain.
Yeah.
And I think that was what I was feeling that day.
It had been waiting for you to come back and collect it.
That's what it felt like.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like. Yeah. But the other place in San Francisco would be Washington Square Park, which is in North Beach. And I was teaching at the San Francisco Art Institute, which is right up the hill. And then it sort of comes down. You got the square there, which is a beautiful little square in the mornings. You have a large crop of women doing Tai Chi, you know. But I would work up the hill at the art school, and then I would know that the bar, Tony Nick's, God bless them, opens at 4:30 or 5. I'm like, okay, they're going to have a martini waiting for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would spend, the morning up there, and I would hang out in the library up there and then write, and then I'd be done. And then I get to come down the hill, and I would have, a little espresso or something at one of the 5 or 6 Italian cafes there, and then I would be able to go get my martini, damn it, because I earned it. And it's all within 300 yards.
Yeah.
And because it's the middle of San Francisco, everybody's passing through, and everybody has passed through. When Marilyn Monroe got married to Joe DiMaggio in a church that's right there at the park, I remember when I was in college, and I had friends that were from New York City. And, they were convinced that New York City was the center of the universe. And that really frustrated me, of course. But, you can start to go through, it's like at almost every block, something has happened.
Right.
It's like, God, this thing is so alive, this city. And San Francisco felt like that, except to me it felt 1,000 times nicer than New York, because it's gorgeous. It's just absolutely gorgeous.
It's beautiful.
And it feels like especially North Beach, feels like a little village. And so I had, my 4 or 5 key points around the village, that I would visit during the day to get my coffee and to get my martini and to work the job and to write in the library. And it was, my whole reality was right there for a while. And I was like, yes, this is exactly where I should be.
Yeah. I lived in San Francisco for a summer in 1996. I had an internship.
Yeah, okay.
And
what was it like in 96?
I mean, I was 19 and I didn't have a fake ID. So I saw what I saw.
Yeah.
I mean, it was amazing. It was magical. It was, I lived and worked in the Mission. I worked at a nonprofit organizing a cross-country bicycle trip, like being the behind the scenes, the interns that were sending out maps, faxing maps to the churches that they were taking showers at, that sort of thing. And I think I lived at like 18th and Castro, or 18th and Mission.
Yeah, okay.
Like just right in it. I sublet an apartment from one of our bike riders, so I had 2 roommates in this 3rd story walk-up beautiful apartment that I paid $1,000 for my rent for the summer. I'm sure now I can't even imagine what rent on that apartment is now.
Right? That might pay for a week.
Might pay for a week.
Yeah.
Maybe. But it was magical. It was magical. I stayed in a hostel for 2 weeks and then rented an apartment for the rest of the summer and just like ran around on the bus, walked everywhere.
Yeah.
Just walked everywhere because San Francisco is small.
It's
so condensed. It's dense, but it is like such a small footprint. If you know how to avoid the hills.
Yes.
Otherwise, you're in trouble.
And you learn that the hard way.
Yeah. But I loved it. And I didn't go back until, I don't know, probably 2009, maybe. I've been back a few times since then. It's just like the sales forcification of San Francisco is so disappointing.
Yeah. Yeah.
There were unhoused people in the 90s. I'm not going to pretend like they weren't. And there were a lot of kids that were from the Midwest and who had read Armistead Maupin and moved to San Francisco, right? Because the weather, at least the weather in San Francisco doesn't kill you if you live outside. But it's really like, it just feels like it's just Salesforce towers, and I don't know. It's lost the charm.
Yeah, the last time I was there, and I haven't been there since COVID, and apparently everybody moved to Austin.
Yeah.
But, I mean, the last time I was walking around the city, it felt like a dystopian nightmare. I mean, the homeless situation was and I lived in the Tender Knob,
Yep.
Sort of right next to the Tenderloin. But then I was walking through the Tenderloin. I'm like, something has to be done. And you have that,
Yeah.
and the only other people that can afford to live in the city are people that are working at Twitter or
Right.
Apple or Google. And so, these newly minted millionaires are walking past people that don't have houses, and that's felt like the whole city. And I'm like, this is
Yeah.
this is unsustainable. But I had a guy tell me, when I moved there, and I sort of saw, I met a lot of refugees from, say, before the from
Yeah.
the dot-com bubble, right?
Yeah.
And their take was like, this is a boom bust town, and the goal is to ride it out, because why would you leave?
Yeah.
And so I saw one boom and bust. Well, I
Yeah.
saw a boom anyway, but I couldn't afford to stay through the boom.
Yeah. No, and I don't have any of my friends who were active in like the Mission Minyan, which was a independent Jewish community in the early aughts. They're all out in Berkeley, Oakland,
Right.
Marin County, Philadelphia.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Nobody's I don't know anyone still in the city.
Yeah, I don't know anybody in the city anymore either.
So, but then Manhattan feels the same way.
Yeah.
Like there's not so many people left for the suburbs or left for Philadelphia or back to their hometowns. So it's interesting to see what's going to happen next, I think. Yeah. Have you found anywhere with the potential of magic in where you live now?
I thought about that. Short answer is no.
Yeah.
And I live in a really beautiful section of Virginia. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. But as far as like is there a room that I really like, or is there a park or something like that I feel like I have to return to? And yeah, no, nothing's grabbed me as much as these other places.
Yeah.
On the list.
Yeah.
Not yet. We'll give it a not yet.
That's fair.
Let's stay optimistic.
Yeah. Yeah, when you just your description in the email, some of the places I immediately thought of were there's a place in Durango, Colorado called the Durango Diner, which I would recommend.
Yeah.
It's a guy from New York who went and opened a New York diner in Durango in like southwestern Colorado. And it was amazing. It's still there. Green chili on your hash browns. That was a place, as soon as I went there, I was like, I am a regular here forever. That's a place I still have dreams of.
Yeah.
I have dreams of visiting Durango and not being able to get to the Durango Diner before it closes at 2. I have anxiety dreams about not being able to get the hangover cure from the Durango Diner. And it's a tiny town. It's a tiny town.
Yeah.
And I'll just run all night, like up and down Main Street. I'll go to other bars. I'll go to other places. And I'm like, but I just need to get to the diner. And I won't make it. I love it. It's so good.
Yeah, I was thinking, like, as we were talking, this is, before I got on tonight, I'm like, what is going to be like the through line or the points in common of these things? And I'm like, well, they'll just rise up as we talk about it. And I don't really, but having said
Right.
that, I'm not quite sure. I think for me, it's like being able to see the whole thing at once. It has to feel, normal sized. It has to feel
Yeah.
life sized. And I think there has to be sort of a sense of community to it. And really good things have to have happened there.
Yeah.
And maybe if that all gets, stirred up together. Which is why maybe, the Presidio, the more I thought about it, like I had like really intense experiences in the Presidio. But as far as feeling like at ease, I don't know. It's also tough to feel at ease, right on the edge of the Pacific Ocean That is,
Yeah.
howling fog and pounding surf and
Yeah. Right. Maybe the weather in San Francisco can't kill you, but the water can.
yes. As I lived right above Baker Beach, and it's a really pretty beach for the city. And when it was sunny, everybody would be out there. But I'd go down there and I'd run on the beach, and more than once I saw cars pull in, and like all the doors open, and it's all these 20-year-olds or like college students. They run screaming, like I don't know how long they've driven to get here.
Yeah.
They run screaming. They go into the water, and as soon as they hit the water, it's like, no, absolutely.
They run screaming the other way.
I've seen dogs get super excited, run into that water, and just be like, oh, this is terrible. This is so damn cold.
Have each of these locations been settings for your writing yet?
No. I keep thinking that I should write something about the electronic music scene in DC in the 90s.
Yeah.
I see other TV shows or, people sort of dip into it, and I'm like, that's not right. That's not how it was. That's not how it was. But to start to try to write how it was, I don't know. It starts to feel silly. I can't get an adult handle on it.
Yeah.
It starts to feel like, oh, those were silly things I thought when I was a kid. And, that doesn't give me enough juice for stories. Like there's a story there. I know all of what it was. And it was a really cool thing that people would be interested to hear about. But I can't turn the corner on it yet.
Yeah. An oral history of the nation.
Right. I mean, those people have still got to be out there. They can't be that hard to find.
Right. Yeah, that's the other thing, too, is like it was before MySpace, before Friendster, like truly ephemeral relationships.
Yeah. Yeah, how did you find anybody? I don't know. Well, you had to assume they were going to be there.
They were going to be where they said they were going to be.
That's right.
Yeah. And maybe, hopefully, they told you their dad's name so you could look them up in a phone book.
In the phone book.
Right?
Right. Absolutely. The last place I did want to say, and this is kind of short, but Ashland, Virginia. When I came back from San Francisco and I was moving back to Virginia, and I kind of had a choice if I was going to live in Richmond or in Roanoke. And I interviewed for some jobs in Roanoke, and I really liked it. And I was like, well, let's just go to Richmond anyway. And I go to Richmond, interviewed for a job, and I really liked it too. And so I'm trying to figure out, which one. And I drove north out of Richmond a little bit to Ashland, which is really where I grew up from like 1 to 6. And I remember driving around this strip mall, and I was like, I remember that. That was a bank. Yeah. God, that's still here? Weird. And I drove up a little bit, and I got out of the car. I can't remember why I was getting out of the car. But I just inhaled, and there was this smell. And it was just this mixture of grass and dirt and sky that I had not smelled since I was 6. But it brought everything back in the instant. I'm like, oh my God, like this is home. I don't know it, but that's what it smells like.
Yeah.
And that was really, really surreal that smell was still there and still in my head. I was like, this is where you're from. Oh yeah, it is. I am from here. And and I don't know anything about it, but I know I'm from here.
That's a good closing note. Cam, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me at CameronMacKenzie.org. That's CameronMacKenzie.org. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook. Both of those are public profiles. You can just friend me if you want to. That's really where I post a lot of stuff about where I'm reading or any classes I'm teaching or anything like that.
Awesome. Any events coming up in late February or March that people should know about?
Well, if you're going to be in Boston, I'm going to Fisher College, and I'm gonna give a talk up there. And I feel like there's something else I'm doing. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's it for the near future.
Hopefully someone will remind you what the second is.
Yeah. I'll get an email.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leah. This is great.
Thank you for listening to Finding Favorites with Leah Jones. Please make sure to subscribe and drop us a 5-star review on iTunes. Now, go out and enjoy your favorite things.